Hello again, and welcome to part 2 of week 15 of Exploring Your Future. I'm just going to go ahead and continue with our slideshow here. So the types of interviews that you'll encounter on the job search include phone interviews, Skype interviews, or really any form of video chat such as Zoom, GoToMeeting, and in-person interviews. So most in-person interviews are done one-on-one, though you may occasionally have a group interview, which involves multiple candidates interviewing at once. Group interviews are less common and often are more informational in nature and typically are followed up by one-on-one interviews after the candidates have been narrowed down. Phone interviews, on the other hand, are very common. Phone interviews typically last 30 minutes to an hour and are used to determine whether or not someone should be invited for an in-person interview. That's why phone interviews are sometimes referred to as phone screenings or screening interviews. Questions are often more basic, so the employer can get to know that candidate and learn about their background and qualifications. Video call interviews are also used to screen candidates and determine whether or not they should be invited for an in-person interview. They can also be used as sort of that first round of interviews for candidates that are not local to the area and would need to travel a long distance to meet you in person. They are also a little bit better than phone interviews in the sense that the interviewer can see your body language and your other nonverbal communication. This type of interview is most common in business industries such as accounting and finance. Okay, so in-person interviews are really considered the sort of best type of interview since you can communicate both verbally and non-verbally, and it does allow you to make a strong impression in person. In-person interviews can last between 1 hour and an entire day, or even multiple days with various interviewers. This depends a lot on the seniority of the position and the industry as well, since different industries have different practices when it comes to interviewing. Okay, so to prepare for your interview, you should really be doing the following. So review the company position and the position you are applying for. So print the position description and look at the company's website, look at their mission and vision statements, try to gain some overall information. Also know how long it will take for you to get to the interview. So typically using Google Maps or some type of GPS. To be on the super safe side, you can find the building the day before just to make sure you know where you're going and you know exactly how long it will take. Always factor in some additional time for parking and then getting into the building and checking in and all of that. Have your outfit picked out the day before, at the very least. So you can visit our career planning office to pick up from the career closet if you have an interview to prepare for. Also schedule a mock interview with the Career Planning Center. So you'll have a chance to do a mock interview with me, but like I said, this really does take practice, and doing so really does help a lot. So I would definitely recommend seeing the Career Planning Center if you do have some time. Also print extra copies of your resume, so you want to have multiple copies of those documents so that you can hand it out to different interviewers, different people that you're meeting with, and you have it in front of you. And also have a Padfolio, writing utensil, and have questions prepared for the interviewer. So just make sure that your questions are appropriate. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but there are many examples of good interview questions online. In general, you want your questions to convey interest and enthusiasm for the position, but hold off on any questions about salary, benefits, and the work schedule. You can ask and negotiate about these factors once you get the job offer. So overall, these are the things that you should be doing, sort of the night before in advance in getting prepared. And I do really recommend having those questions in advance just so that you don't feel put on the spot at the end of the interview when they say, do you have any questions for me? It sort of helps to have that prepared already. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about what interview attire looks like. So you can see on this slide here sort of what the business professional attire looks like that you should be using for an interview. So you can see here there's a couple different examples. We have some men and women here as well. So here I would say is an example of sort of a classic pantsuit. So you can see she has a blazer on. She also has long slacks, a slight heel as well, and then a professional blouse underneath. So any of these examples are really excellent examples of business professional. And you you really don't want to deviate from this too much when it comes to interview attire. So here is an example with a skirt as well. So a couple different options you have. Typically it should be a dark colored outfit. So typically like gray, navy blue, black. Wear a blazer over a nice blouse. Dress pants or pencil skirts are fine, and you would need some type of formal shoes or heel. And if you do opt to wear a heel, make sure that it's less than 1 inch. It really shouldn't be super high or super exaggerated in any way. And also you want to make sure that you can walk in it as well. I'm not super great at walking in heels, so I generally recommend wearing sort of a lower heel if you're going to go with that option. Okay, so a couple more tips on what to wear. So if you do choose to wear makeup, which you don't have to, just make sure it's light and make sure that your colors are neutral. As well, avoid wearing any flashy jewelry. You can wear jewelry if you'd like, but keep it simple, nothing too loud. If you wear perfume, keep it light and don't use anything overpowering. Don't wear colors that are too bold or intense, and limit your prints and patterns. Perhaps most importantly, when in doubt, dress up. You really can't go wrong by dressing too formally for an interview, but there's lots of ways to go wrong by not dressing formally enough. So really do stick to that business professional. Now, with all of that being said, always wear what is most comfortable and what is most authentic to you, falling within these guidelines, of course. So if you don't like to wear skirts or heels, you're not required to wear them. So whatever type of business professional suit you can find, make sure that you're comfortable and you feel like yourself in it. Some other tips for your interviews. Arrive 15 minutes before the scheduled interview. That does give you enough time, again, to make sure that you know where you're going. You don't want to be rushing like Chris was in our example video earlier, since that really just gives you so much more stress immediately before the interview. I wouldn't recommend arriving more than 15 minutes early, just because that can sort of put the interviewer on the spot or make them feel like they have to rush their schedule, and they might not be ready to meet with you in advance. So even if that involves like waiting in the parking lot for a few minutes to kind of freshen up and then going inside, really 15 minutes is a good cutoff. So 15 minutes early is about what you want to be. If you need to, you can use the restroom to check your appearance, spit out any gum or mints, put your cell phone on silent and leave it in your bag. Better yet, what I often do is put my cell phone on airplane mode. Airplane mode means that your cell phone is not connected to any data, so you can't get incoming calls or text messages or Snapchat or like whatever it might be. But then that way, if you do have to open up your phone to look at your calendar or something to schedule the next interview, or you do need to put some information in it, at least then it's not entirely turned off and you can't access it quickly. So that's just what I do. But either way, just make sure that you're not going to be hearing your phone go off in the middle of your interview. Also, make sure to greet the receptionist. It's super important with interviews to be friendly to all of the people that you see, whether it's the receptionist or the hiring manager or really anyone in the building you encounter. During the interview, give each person you meet with a firm handshake, use good eye contact, keep your posture open and sit upright, smile, and make sure your voice is heard and speak clearly. Make sure to ask questions, again, avoiding the topics of salary, vacation time, etc. So what kinds of questions should you expect? Here are some basic interview questions that you will get in just about any job interview. So the first one is, tell me about yourself. That is basically in any job interview, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So definitely be prepared to touch upon both of those. And weaknesses, you do kind of want to emphasize a positive quality in that sense, or perhaps talk about something that you've improved upon, or that you're working on to kind of show personal growth. What interested you in the position and company, where you see yourself in 5 years? How would a friend or previous coworker say your strengths are? And what makes you the best candidate for the position? So these are sort of those typical ones that you should be prepared to answer in just about any interviewer. And I'm going to get a little bit more specific in part 3, so I apologize again, I can only do 10 minutes at a time. This particular lecture is a little bit on the lengthy side just because I have a lot to cover. So I will meet you back in part 3.